Lego minifigures have changed a lot in 50 years. Some got completely modernized, others got new heads made specifically for them, while some just came back after years. So in this video, I'll show you 19 Lego minifigures who changed the most, starting with the one that made all of them possible. Before 1999, every Lego head was the same with different printing. Then Star Wars launched, and Lego made something for Jar Jar Binks that had never existed before. A fully custom molded head. One solid piece, completely unlike a normal minifig head, and with absolutely no printing on it at all. Every single custom head in Lego goes back to the most hated Star Wars character ever created, which is either insanely ironic or 100% perfect. But for Jar Jar to even exist, the minifigure itself had to exist first, and the path to Primo was anything but easy. Lots of prototypes were made before what came out in 1978, including a very minimalist version. It started showing up in 1975, and for the time, it was actually a pretty good placeholder. Nowadays, it looks completely cursed, without limbs and a faceplate, but in 1975, this was the best thing Lego had. 3 years later, they released Officer Primo, eventually leading to Jar Jar Binks, and the biggest thing in Lego this year, the return of Spongebob. The original Spongebob theme ran from 2006 to 2012, and the figures were pretty limited because of Lego's skill level. SpongeBob's body was just a giant rectangle sitting on standard body pieces, Patrick had no belly but did get a cool headpiece, and Squidward used regular minifigure parts that Lego tried to save with printing. After its run, the theme spent 14 years off the shelves, and now that it's back, Lego redesigned all three from scratch. The new SpongeBob has a one-piece body that connects directly to his legs, with holes for Technic pins where arms attach. Patrick finally has a combined head and stomach piece that gives him his giant belly, and Squidward gets a completely new head mold, which isn't a new concept for him, but the headpiece itself is new. These are all insane improvements, but not every change lands this well. Woody was Lego's most experimental minifigure in 2010. He had a custom molded head and hat as one piece, extra long arms, and extra long legs to capture the ragdoll proportions he has in the movies. Custom molded heads are clearly the way to go for accuracy, but for Toy Story 4 in 2019, Lego abandoned it. Instead, Woody had a regular head with a printed face, normal arms, and standard legs, and fans were torn. One reviewer said it was 100 times better, while another said the new head doesn't look like Woody. The 2010 version prioritized the movie accuracy over minifigure aesthetics. The 2019 version did the opposite, and something similar happened with Buzz Lightyear. In 2010, he had 3 separate pieces above his shoulders alone, and his headpiece was obviously very accurate to the movies. But in 2016, the Disney CMF series gave him a standard minifigure head with a printed face instead, and still kept the same astronaut pieces. He stayed the same for Toy Story 4 in 2019 until the Lightyear sets came out in 2022, when Lego made a new armor piece for the 3rd time and kept his head in standard Lego. Did the new version deserve a new head model? Probably not, but he definitely needed a different hairpiece. This really just isn't accurate. Regardless, a minifigure with an insane before and after is Spider-Man. The 2002 version was Lego's first superhero license during a time when printing barely existed on arms and legs. He had silver web lines on his torso and hips, but not his legs. But the real shocker was Toby's handmade suit, which was only ever made in 2002, so some people don't even think it's real. However, Lego lost the Spider-Man license to Mega Bloks in 2004, so Lego Spider-Man disappeared for 8 years. When he came back under Marvel in 2012, he was still pretty simple, but 3 years later, he got dual molded legs for the first time, which was absolutely huge. The Daily Bugle version had arm printing on his suit for the first time and dual-sided head printing. It's pretty much perfect now. But there was a very cursed villain in that original run. He was built around Sam Raimi's version, so he had a molded helmet piece sculpted to look like the mask, but it was just way too big. Luckily, LEGO switched to the comic book version in 2016, so he had a standard head with a printed face, a separate headpiece for his hat, and really detailed prints on his body. And this was for a junior set, by the way, so it only got better in the Daily Bugle set. It used the same comic book style and had way more details in the printing, which is crazy considering it started here. But Johnny Thunder actually got a new version recently. He was the main hero of the Adventurers theme from 1998 to 2003 before it completely disappeared. And his minifigure looks very fitting for the time. A flat faceplate with a surprisingly detailed torso and his signature hat. Adventurers never came back, despite how much people love it. So LEGO snuck him into CMF Series 19 as the Jungle Explorer. It got officially confirmed by graphic designer Austin Carlson, but we didn't need to hear it. The red bandana, the mustache, and the signature hat, this is without a doubt Johnny Thunder. But his updated version is so much more detailed than his older ones. And apparently, he abandoned the desert to go explore the jungle. He also turned up again in the City Explorer sub-theme in 2024. But the better story is what happened to Dr. Kilroy. He was in the same theme as Johnny and had signature details too, like his red bow tie and white beard. He got a few more versions before Adventurers retired in 2003, but none of them were exactly modern. That came in the Natural History Museum set in 2023. It had a minifigure listed only as the Curator, and designer Chris McVie confirmed it's a modernized version of Dr. Kilroy. But again, if you just look at the details, it's pretty obvious. Reviewers even joked about it, saying he could pass for either Dr. Kilroy or his twin, Dr. Charles Lightning, which is just a name LEGO used for different parts of the world. But speaking of LEGO faces, LEGO's process for complex heads actually involves sculpting them with clay first, then scanning them digitally to use as the basis for the final mold. The Simpsons minifigures in 2014 went through this process, and the before and after is actually documented. There are pictures of Bart, Homer, Ned Flanders, and Maggie online, and the differences are actually noticeable. Even before this, though, LEGO was probably considering using regular heads with prints on them instead, like they did for Squidward. The Simpsons collabed with LEGO on an episode and released it the same year as the early versions of the sets. However, the animation team actually spent 2 full years animating the episode, way before they were gonna make minifigs in real life. So this is probably how the Simpsons minifigs were originally gonna look. But surprisingly, the Power Miners minifigure from 2009 went through a lot of changes too. Brickopedia has a 3-way comparison photo with the original prototype, an intermediate version, and the final minifig that shipped in sets, and all 3 look like different people. The color scheme that actually made it on the shelves wasn't the first or even the second one, but besides that, I don't even know what's going on with the first one. These pieces make no sense compared to the final version. But even popular minifigs have weird beginnings, like Mr. Gold, who also had his own prototype stage. Unlike a lot of other minifigs, there's only one version online, and it's pretty much identical to the released version. But that's not the case for Hagrid from Harry Potter. This theme launched in 2001 and immediately had the same problems every licensed theme dealt with early on. LEGO didn't have the parts to make the characters accurate. Hagrid needed to be big, and the closest piece LEGO had was from the Jack Stone theme, which we all know is nothing like normal LEGO. This theme used oversized figures with inseparable bodies and big foot pieces, designed to be easy for toddlers to play with. So to improvise, LEGO took those feet and put them on Hagrid, which basically made him look like a caveman. He got better over the next 10 years, but the biggest change was in 2018. when they finally gave him a proper hairpiece and made a giant torso specifically for him. But a character with worse problems was Dobby. In 2002, he had this rubber head with hollowed out eyes for pupils and absolutely no printing. Even though Jar Jar revolutionized minifigs, LEGO was far from making these custom heads perfect. Like Hagrid, Dobby didn't get a serious upgrade until 2010, when LEGO finally gave him printed eyes. But unlike Hagrid, Dobby kind of went downhill after this. Instead of the detailed head we'd been used to, LEGO started relying on prints to bring him to life, which, like Toy Story, was them prioritizing LEGO aesthetics instead of movie accuracy. So even the most recent one isn't as accurate to the movies. Yoda should have ended up the same way, but he didn't. He was the second custom character head LEGO made after Jar Jar, and ended up as cursed as Dobby. Again, he had no printing for the eyes and didn't get it until 2009, and obviously this version looks way different. The Clone Wars TV show had just popped off, so it was the perfect chance for LEGO to make more sets, which they did, and they made custom heads like Yoda's to match the art style of the show. Since then, LEGO's gone back to their original style and made tweaks that led us to this version from 2026, which admittedly doesn't look that different from this version that's 10 years older. But the weirdest head of them all was Chewbacca's. He launched in 2000 with the worst version of Jar Jar's approach. One solid piece with a few tiny prints and barely any fur texture. If you didn't already know what Chewbacca looked like, he'd be kind of hard to recognize in LEGO, which is crazy considering LEGO didn't upgrade him until 2014. It was a huge change from the last one though. I mean, you could actually make out who it was from far away. But Jar Jar wasn't the only revolutionizer in LEGO Star Wars. In 2000, the Boba Fett minifigure only had printing on his helmet and torso, which was typical for the time. But in 2003, the Cloud City set flipped it on its head. This Boba Fett was the first LEGO minifigure in history with printed arms. So every single minifig with arm printing goes back to this version of Boba Fett. The set was only sold in LEGO stores, which is the main reason why it's so rare and expensive. But the funny thing is, arm printing didn't stick. The next 6 Boba Fett minifigs didn't have printing on the arms, which covered 12 years in real time. He only got them back in 2015, and even then, some versions after this still don't have it. So LEGO isn't exactly consistent with these prints. But what most people don't know is that Cloud City has 2 historic minifigs. Along with Boba Fett is Lando Calrissian, one of the first minifigures ever with a realistic skin tone. Before 2003, every Star Wars minifig had yellow skin, and obviously Lando is black, so the typical yellow skin tone wasn't really gonna work anymore. But when LEGO actually made him black, apparently everyone immediately thought that the yellow color was representing white people the entire time. So less than a year later, every minifig in LEGO Star Wars was getting real skin tones to clear up the confusion. Now, there is a debate on whether Lando was actually the first minifig with a real skin tone, since the Kobe minifig came out the same year. Apparently, it was released in January and Lando released in October, but the dates aren't always 100% accurate with stuff this old. Regardless, after 2004, LEGO thought they were past all the confusion, but the Clone Wars started a new version. As we already know, LEGO made new faceplates to match the art style of the show, and it was the easiest way to tell the difference between sets based on Star Wars movies versus the Clone Wars. But apparently, people were having actual trouble. These 2 versions of Anakin were released a year apart, and casual fans were having a genuine problem figuring out why one of them had giant blue eyes. It came in a set with other characters that you never know about if you didn't watch the Clone Wars, while the other version was in a set based on a very famous scene in Revenge of the Sith. It all eventually disappeared once LEGO retired the Clone Wars minifigs, but for a minute there, some people genuinely had no idea what was going on. But which one of these minifigures surprised you the most? Be sure to let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.